Why you stupid ass popping willies?
Now, to wrap this up, don't want to take it too long. You're the perfect person to ask this because you've been on both sides of the spectrum. So a lot of comedians like myself and like other ones trying to come up in the game, they've been using the internet to their advantage, like posting on Instagram and YouTube and stuff. And you dominated YouTube with the Brickstone stuff, but you also have the traditional route that you took to be a comedian. What would you say is better? Because a lot of internet comedians are trash. Like there's a few good ones, like there's Andrew Schulz and like Noel Miller.
Right, but Andrew, of course, is a very respected stand-up also.
Yeah, because he's good. He's very
he's great. He's a great stand-up, yeah.
A lot of other comedians that are like coming up from just YouTube alone weren't that good. So I'm going to ask you, like, are comedians that come off the internet, aside from Andrew, are they usually respected in the game as if someone who just took the traditional route, as like all your friends did, like you did?
Well, you have to understand, Andrew is not a guy who came off the internet.
Yeah.
He was a stand-up already. He was a respected stand-up who went to the internet, which is basically what every stand-up's expected to do. They're expected to, at least try to go viral and try to find other ways of, putting on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. So I would say, I don't think it really matters how you get there if you have the talent once you're there. The problem is you don't want to be a guy like that guy, what's his last name? Knight. Southern Mama. You don't want to be.
Is it Jack Knight?
Oh, no. Jack Knight is a comic who's great.
Yeah, I've met Jack Knight. He's a good.
Jack Knight's great. I'm talking about a white guy whose last name is something Knight, and he did a character called Southern Mama, and that it was like huge on Facebook, and then he tried to transition to stand-up, and of course got obliterated.
Yeah.
Because they're just, it's like going from, it's like going from having a really popular taco truck to being the chef in a restaurant. It's just a different world. It's a different level of criticism. I think, look, if you are doing comedy that translates, if your comedy on stage in stand-up is good and audiences like it and comics think it's good, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting there through YouTube. Mm-hmm. It only matters of how you do, because the majority of YouTube comics, it doesn't translate. Usually the problem with YouTube comics is they're usually doing a very rudimentary version of comedy, and they're usually touching upon subjects that if they were in the stand-up world, they would know are beaten to death. Mm-hmm. Or that they're doing jokes that are the versions of jokes that have been done before by famous, like George Carlin or something. And so what happens is you get a lot of people like sort of I think her name was Nicole Arbor, who was like, her jokes were like on a stand-up level, they were garbage. Mm. But when you're on YouTube, you don't have to appeal to whoever's in a stand-up has to make average people, whoever happens to be in that room, find you funny. With YouTube, you just have to find anyone out there who thinks you're funny. Yeah. So you can just appeal to a very specific kind of person. Whereas a stand-up has to be able to appeal to whoever just walked through that door. And it's a very different skill set.
Yeah. Like the guy was talking about, Noel Miller, he has a group called Tiny Meat Gang with his friend. And they're big on YouTube. Like they made videos that went dummy viral with like 24 million views and stuff. Now they sell out shows doing their podcast live in front of a lot of people all over. They've sold out like world tours and stuff just coming off the internet.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is, people, we live in a world where, you can be the very lowest common denominator. And let's face it, the majority of people who become huge on YouTube are not people whose material you really respect. Yeah. But sometimes there are. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're one of those people. Like, I think that my Brickstone videos are on the side of comics like them. Yeah. And I think that's a big difference. Whereas what you don't want to be is someone, because if you could be famous just by being funny and witty, then great. If you need to be famous by just being, ooh, aren't you? By just being, ooh, I'm so edgy. Can you believe I just said that? You suck. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to go anywhere with it. Or if it's just about being affable, likable, having a jawline, like the movie Jawline kind of implied, like, then if you're not doing anything special, if you're not doing anything that's a skill that other people can't do, then I think decent people are gonna be like, well, this is stupid, and you're stupid for liking it. And then you see, perfect example, 5 years ago, the number one YouTube channel was Smosh.
Yeah.
It was so big they got a movie.
Mhm.
Did you see the movie?
Yeah. Well, no, I never watched the movie.
Yeah.
Is it garbage?
Yeah, it's pretty goddamn bad.
Yeah.
The end of that movie, it's worth watching for the very last line of the movie is the hackiest joke I have ever seen.
Do you remember it?
Oh yeah. Smosh is two dudes. The shorter one, the one who I guess still is technically quote unquote Smosh with like people he hires to like
left. It's Ian. Yeah.
Yeah. He meets a girl whose name he doesn't know, and she's like some girl he's in love with from afar, and they finally hang out, and she's like, I think also a YouTube person, but like obviously way too hot for him. And she's really beautiful. And then at the end of the movie, he just goes, oh, by the way, I never got your name. And this is a drop dead gorgeous blonde YouTube influencer. She goes, oh, my name? It's Frank. And Smosh guy goes, what the fuck?
That's the end.
Credits.
Oh my god, dude, that make me want to. Oh, I really want to kill myself. If I heard that. It's awful. Damn, Frank. What the? Oh my god, no.
Is that the hackiest thing you've?
Yeah.
I mean, in 2016, for Christ's sake.
You could actually make jokes that were offensive in 2016.
Yeah.
And then you made that shit. Okay, well. I have another example of like the inner, because comedians, a lot of them don't like me. I found, like Annie Letterman. Do you know who that is? Obviously,
I do know Annie. I do know Annie.
Annie fucking hates me.
What'd you do?
Do you remember that joke I sent you? I sent you a joke years ago, I think.
Oh, did you?
Because I was like 20 years old and I thought I was hot shit on stage. I was like, hey, Dave, I'm funny. And I sent you that joke. Well, I did that same thing to her. And she takes that joke, puts on her podcast, and just tells me how garbage I am at comedy.
Well,
like,
Annie, I love Annie, but Annie is a mean girl. Yeah,
no, I wasn't upset about it. She was really angry. But this is the funny part about it. I sent that joke to a YouTuber named KSI. You probably know KSI, obviously.
Yes, I do.
Biggest UK YouTuber. On his, he has a series called One Question Go, and I happened to get into it. I was like, hey, can I show you a joke? And he's like, yeah. He puts that joke on his YouTube video that gets 4 million views. And he thought it was funny, and the comments thought I was funny too.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense because that is kind of how that tends to go. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Because like, that is really, really funny just in the sense of like comics tend to hate things. And like the more you're in comedy, the higher your standards get. And it usually kind of makes you more separated from the audience. And a great comic is someone who can continue on that incline of making their comedy more and more tight and respectable to comics and still maintain an audience.
Yeah.
Because it's a weird thing. A lot of comics notice this. The jokes you wrote when you first started comedy always work for the dumbest crowds.
Yeah. I remember my first joke ever. It worked, but I think it was a dumb crowd.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about it. It's a weird dichotomy. And that's what YouTube kind of does. They're playing to those people. They're playing to the dumber crowd.
Yeah.
They're playing to the crowd of people who have never seen a stand-up show. And so you end up this thing where it's like, it's the difference between telling a joke to your coworkers, which is really what YouTube's dynamic kind of is, compared to like going to a play. Like, it's a very different psychology.
I'm about to throw this nigga over the ledge. Bruce Willis in 6 cents, he don't know that he dead. Could let him find out for himself or I could show him instead. And I see your scared tactics. You was weird trapping. You was home sleeping on your homie air mattress. Every artist that's in the game know you an actual lame. You was a bum asking for change and that's factual lame.